Today we have Scott Jelinek in the studio. He's a real estate master guru, been through everything, been through the '08 market, and now he is the founder of Freedom Accelerator program and doing a ton of stuff in real estate, right? I mean, what do you got going on, man? What's Freedom Accelerator? Let's start there.
So Freedom Accelerator program is basically one of the things I've realized over the years is that we all are led down this path believing that what we want is to make $1 million for more money and make $1 bazillion. And what I realized as we went through the boom and bust and losing stuff, which we can talk about in a minute, is that really that's not what everyone's after. Although people say that, what they're really after is freedom. Mm-hmm. What they're really after, nobody wants the money, because what do you do with money? You have to buy stuff. The money itself is worthless. And what do the people use the money for is freedom. And so we basically kind of tried to dial in on exactly what are people seeking for. They're not seeking to be rich, although this will get you there. That's not what they're after. What they're after is stopping the rat race and just being free. And so we tried to make that our primary objective and not just how to make $1 bazillion in your bank account, because there's a million ways to make $1 million, right? But most of them involve trading your life, trading your hours for dollars. And so we tried to flip that on its head and say, no, our objective is freedom, and we'll make money along the way, but freedom is the objective.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to start with that just to jump right in, and because I think people are going to get so much value out of this podcast. So I want people to stick around and like really understand what it is that you're doing, because I think it's really cool. I sat through your 2-hour webinar and learned more in real estate than from Grant Cardone and probably 10 other people combined over 10 years. So the slow flip is the concept that it seems like this program has been built around. But before that, going way back, how did you get started in real estate? Like, what got you into the...
Wow, how much time do you have? So I'll give you the short version. And you probably already saw some of it if you watched my webinar. But the short version is I moved to Virginia Beach in 1992, and I was mowing lawns. That was what I did. I was a landscaper. Mm-hmm. I was mowing lawns. I rented a townhouse at the time for $675 a month, and then one came for sale. My brother got a flyer, and only old people will remember this, but back then it was called non-qualifying assumptions, where anyone can take over the mortgage, kind of like a sub-2, but with the bank's blessing. And it was $5,000 down and $675 a month. And I was already paying $675, and I had $5,000, right? So I felt like no interest in real estate, just better to own than to rent, right? So I decided I wanted it. Just based on the flyer, I decided I wanted it. I went over, I ended up buying that house, moved into it. And again, just mowing lawns now, still no interest in real estate. Then another sign came up on the block that said $2,000 down, take over payments. And in hindsight, I know how stupid this sounds, because I didn't even know the price or the value or anything about the house, other than they were townhouses, so they were pretty much all the same. But other than I put $5,000 down and this one was $2,000 down, right? So my genius brain said, well, let me buy that one also. And then I'm cost averaging out to $3,500 each. I really still didn't have interest in real estate, but every month when they would pay me and I would pay the mortgage, it was knocking in my head that I borrowed this money, they're paying it off. I borrowed it, they're paying it off. And that's when I first started having a spark of, why don't I buy more?
So you almost accidentally got into
Absolutely. It was completely an accident. I never had aspirations of doing real estate.
Yeah.
This is 1994, mind you. And it was all by accident, because I just started thinking, well, I'm buying it, they're paying it off. I said, why don't I buy a lot more? And I never planned on making it my career or my business or anything. It was just going to be something on the side. And I used to call it, and jokingly, and you probably heard this already, my McDonald's plan. And I never worked at McDonald's, but I used to tell people, I'm going to buy $1 million worth of these, and then I can go work at McDonald's for 30 years and I'll be a millionaire. And it was a joke, but it was serious. It was like, basically just wait out time. I don't have to make any money, just wait out time and I'll be a millionaire. And that was how I got started, and that was the short version of it.
So back then, were you think money motivated, or do you think you were looking for that freedom?
Money motivated.
Yeah.
I did a lot of things wrong along the way, and and this is again what crystallized things for me on what I do now. And again, I guess we got time, so I'll go through it with you. So starting in 2001, I got to about 20 properties between 1994 and 2001. In 2001 was the first inkling we had of appreciation. Up until 2001, I was buying for the same prices they bought for in 1986 and 87. I was taking over their mortgages. No appreciation. Well, in 2001, it started having appreciation. I started getting shocked. I'm like, my $65,000 townhouse is worth 100. It's worth 90. It's worth 120. I mean, it was crazy to me. And at the same time, now I'm going to seminars. I'm reading books. I'm trying to learn real estate investing. Well, I did what everybody taught to do and still teaches to do, which is, everybody now they have a name for it. They call it the Burr method. But back then it was just what you did, right? So we would buy these houses. I had all these 20 houses, so I'd refi them and pull out 60 grand, 70 grand, and then use that money to buy more houses. And I was buying sub twos back then. And it was working really well. I got to 84 houses, and 84 houses by 2007. My plan at the time was to get to $100,000 a month in income and then stop and just work on paying them down. And this is why I teach having a future vision now, which is why I'm big on a future vision, because the $100,000 a month had no basis behind it. It was just a arbitrary number, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the pursuit for that $100,000 a month, I kept building and putting money back in, putting money back in, putting the money back in until the bust came. And I got crushed by the bust. And I just had a conversation yesterday, which killed me to even think about, is I keep talking about the bust like it was yesterday, like everybody knows. And I'm like, that was 15 years ago now.
Yeah. You're talking about 08, right?
Yes, it really
crash.
started in 07, but yeah, they call it
07.
08 crash. And I'm like, wow, that was 15 years ago. And we got crushed. And so I ended up losing 55 of my houses to foreclosure.
Wow.
And all my money. I had almost $1 million in cash saved now. All my money fighting the good fight. Every month, negative cash flow, 25, 30 grand, paying to keep it, everything, thinking this is going to end soon.
Keeping it afloat.
And it didn't. And then after it was over and I lost everything I could lose, I started, everybody went back to their jobs, mind you. Everybody that had any skill or a previous job that got into real estate went back to their jobs, right? But I had no skill. And for me, I couldn't go back. I would have to get a job like as a brain surgeon to be able to get a job, right? And they're not hiring just random dropouts for brain surgery, right? So I had to figure real estate out. Well, one of the things I did, which is one of the smartest things I ever did, and I still recommend people to do it, is I started talking to the older guys who were doing well. There was guys that were killing it during the downturn. Mostly everybody I knew went out of business and they went back to their jobs. But then I had these older guys I knew that were like our lenders. Well, they were killing it. They're buying more than ever. They're crushing it. And so I started having lunch with them, and I would try and ask a lot of questions and find out what's the difference between you and them. You're flourishing and they all went out of business. And one of the things, and I tell everybody this, was a common denominator, 100% of them owned everything free and clear. Everything. And everybody you talk to this day, free and clear is so bad. Leverage, leverage, leverage. You got to, mortgage everything to the hilt, make money with other people's money and all this beautiful stuff. And it all sounds great. And it is great until it's not, right? And so all of them owned everything free and clear. So if tenants weren't paying, it didn't matter. It was just lost revenue, but it didn't cost them anything. They didn't have house payments. They didn't have car payments. They didn't have anything. I used to drive. I had 2 Cadillac Escalades, which I loved. And I had a Cadillac XLR convertible. I don't know if you remember those. It was beautiful. I love that car more than anything.
It was basically a Corvette, but it was a Cadillac.
Beautiful. And I'm going to pick up checks. These guys are loaning me money. I was renovating back then. I'm going to pick up checks from them in my $105,000 car, and they pull up in a Honda Accord. And it never dawned on me. I'm always thinking, this guy just doesn't know what he's doing, and this guy this, and this guy that. And it never dawned on me until after the fact. And then I'm like, they knew exactly what they were doing. All along, I was thinking, this guy's stupid. This guy's stupid. If he knew what he was doing, he'd be making so much more money, right?
Yeah.
And then flip now. I drive a Honda Accord, and I'm proud of it. I drive it. I tell everybody it's my badge of honor. And I've been since 2013. I bought my first Accord. I'm on my second one now, and that's exactly what I drive. And now I have more money than I've ever had in my life. I can drive anything in the world I want.
But you're like those guys that were back in the day that you thought were stupid.
That's my badge of honor. I keep my Accord.
So there was a point in the market. I'm going to silence my phone here. We'll have to edit this out. Cut this out. There was a time in the market where you said appreciation did not really exist. It was like the home prices were the same from the 90s.
Mid 80s all the way up to about 2001.
Do you think that we could ever get back into a market like that?
Absolutely.
You think so?
To a flat market? Absolutely. We should have a flat market. You can't keep going at the rates we've been going. It's not, if you were to take all of time, you would have to divide it out and it would come to like a 3%. I think that they say we average at 3% appreciation, and that's all the time. That includes the flat markets. So we do have those years, like these last couple of years, where we're at 20%. Well, 20% is not sustainable, but if you add it into the flat times, it averages 3% over the years. And so, yeah, I definitely think we'll have flat markets again.
Do you have any predictions on when we could see a flat market or a leveling out?
I'm wrong, and I'll tell you why I'm wrong, because the markets aren't even real anymore. I really believed at the end of last year, the end of 2022, I really believe 2023 we are going into a downturn firmly. Everything pointed to a downturn for 2023. And we are rocking and rolling. Prices are still going up. Houses are selling in 2 days, 5 bids on every house on the market.
It's insane.
I'm like, all right, well, there's no basis of fact as to why. So they just say supply and demand. And I'm like, all right, let's just roll with it.
I guess it's like they can't build maybe like they used to, like the land excess, or I don't know.
You know what? The slow flip, and you know the slow flip because you watch my webinar, our model is based on owning free and clear. So I don't care anymore. I have 170 houses now. I have just under 80 of them are already free and clear. They're all free and clear within 5 years. And so I almost don't care. I'm like, if the market goes to crap, it means we get buying opportunities. If the market stays great, we have new selling opportunities. So either way, we have opportunities. Yeah. So it's like I'm caring one way or the other.
So you worked through multiple different products. You went through BRRRRs. Did you ever do any flips?
I did hundreds of flips. I stopped renovating in 2013. And I can tell you a funny story as to why.
Did you ever get into commercial?
Never got into commercial. I may or may not sometime in the future, but
mostly all residential. But you tried just about everything in residential.
All single family residential.
When was your first slow flip experience? How did you
2011.
2011.
So interesting how it came about. 2 things had to have happened simultaneously, actually more than 2 things. But I used to do mobile homes very similar to the way I do slow flips now. I was doing real estate as rentals, but I had read a book and it was talking about basically owner financing mobile homes, buying them cheap, and I would buy them for about $2,000 each, and then selling them with financing for about $8,900. We'd get $500 down, $226 a month for 7 years. It was 18% interest. And I liked it. It was great money, but 10 months we were free and clear of it. Got all our money back. And I had like 28, 29 of them. And it was going well. You couldn't do this with houses back then. And then after the bust, houses that during the boom, there was nothing in our entire market that was below 100,000. I mean, everybody would race out there in a second if there was. After the bust, houses were coming on the market for 30 grand. I bought one for 16 grand. And I was like, and then I started doing them. I said, I could do these just like we do the mobile homes. Buy them and sell them with owner financing. Then the next problem was I didn't have any credit. I lost all my houses to foreclosure, 55 of them anyway. So I couldn't get financed for a pack of gum, right? Yeah. So then I didn't have any money. I didn't have any credit and I didn't have any money. So I was like, all right, well, the deals are here. The plan is there, but how can I finance them? And I want them free and clear, but I don't have money to buy them. So I came up with the idea, okay, we're going to raise private money, not hard money, because hard money you have to sell to pay them off or come up with the money or refi, which I couldn't do. So private money where we can pay payments toward paying it off, not a balloon. But most private money lenders don't want to do long term. So I was calculating what's the shortest time I can use private money, paying it off without being negative cash flow, which is where we came up with basically our whole basis of our plan, where we do it over 5 years. We pay 12% interest, which is a lot of interest. But on such a short amortization, it doesn't amount to much. And then so we started, that's why the plan is twofold. One half is buying them on short-term financing. The other is selling them on long-term financing.
So your first one, 2011, right? Yeah. When you got that first one and you've experienced that, were you like, wow, this is it? Like at that moment, or did
No. So I started buying a lot in 2011 because I had this vision in my head. But part of the process is you really don't make money for 5 years. And I know people hate to hear that, especially young people. I had lunch yesterday with a guy who's 21, and I'm like, I know for you, it's a quarter of your life. So you're thinking 5 years, I want money next month, right? But for other older people, 5 years is nothing to set yourself free. Well, the first 5 years, I was buying a lot, but I questioned myself every month because I was not making any money the first 5 years. And so 2013, 14, I would have meetings and be like, are we doing the right thing? Is this, what am I doing? I have all these houses now, we're not making anything. And then 2016 hit, and suddenly I was the smartest guy in the world. Seriously, overnight, I was a genius because now they're free and clear. Yeah. And everything that was going on the previous 5 years went away instantly because now I had these houses free and clear. So it changed everything.
Wow. So you call them slow flips, right? And I think not a lot of people call them that, but it's the I guess the familiar term that everyone would have is like owner financing them out, right? Is that kind of is there a difference with that, or is it?
The difference is slow flip is part owner financing, but it's also, there's 2 parts to it, the buy side and the sell side. So if we don't call them slow flips and we just call them owner financing, then naturally the next question is going to be, well, where do you buy them? How do you fund them? What price points do you do? So by encompassing it all as a slow flip, it includes the buy side and the sell side, because we have a system for the entire process, not just for how to sell properties that you have.
Mm-hmm. So why is it that it takes 5 years to give me a breakdown of like the the financing, I guess, or how that works with taking 5 years and then afterwards.
So 5 years is insane short. Most of us, including yourselves, I don't know if you own your own home now, most of us are trained, and we do buy houses with a 30-year mortgage. Well, when houses got cheap after the bust, I remember I was looking for $30,000 for a house. And I remember saying, why does a house have to be 30 years? I just bought a car for $30,000 and it was 5 years. So I said, why is a house 30? And so I started playing with the calculator, and I'm like, you know what? We're going to do it for 5 years, just like a car. And that's one of my sayings. I say, we buy them like a car and we sell them like a house. And that's exactly why. So that was the highest price point, the shortest term we can amortize it, where we didn't have negative cash flow, which is where we came with 5 years. We do have some lenders that do. We also buy in Illinois and Missouri, and a lot of them, you'll think it's crazy when you hear these numbers, but we buy houses for 20 grand there on 4-year mortgages. 4-year mortgages, they're paid off in 4 years. We sell them on 30-year mortgages. We still get $875 a month. It's crazy. I'm like, how do they exist? And they're abundant. They're everywhere.
Yeah. And I think people might ask, like, who would buy from you guys this property that you got at a 4-year mortgage and have a 30-year mortgage on it? But what are the situations that they're in? They
don't even have to be in one. So that's what's great. A lot of people, when they hear about slow flips, they're like, well, that sounds predatory, or you must be taking advantage of people, right? And yet I always say, well, talk to my clients. They love me more than anything. And I'll tell you why. They're not paying any more than they were going to pay if I didn't do it with them. You know what they were going to pay? They were going to pay $875 and rent somewhere. And now they're paying $875 and owning. Their payment stays the same as to what they would have paid elsewhere. So why would they buy it from me and not buy it for 20 grand themselves? Which is a great question. Great question. And you didn't ask it, but I know people think it all the time. Is because the $20,000 one or the $30,000 or the $40,000 one, you got to pay cash. Mine, you get with financing. And that's it. I always tell people, another one of my sayings is, we sell the financing, the house comes with it. What we're selling is your ability to buy our house. I've sat at tables with people and I'm selling a house for 80 grand. And they'll be like, but there's one just like it. I saw it literally could be next door for 40 grand. How come this one's 80? And I'll say, 40 grand, that's a really good deal. If I was you, I would buy that one. And they'll be like, well, that one I got to pay cash for. I'm like, well, then I would buy mine. That's it.
Let them connect the dots.
I don't ever push anybody in any direction. These are the options, mine or rent.
Right.
Because we don't do any credit checks. We do, your down payment is your credit. Everybody's approved on a first come, first served basis. I have 170 of them now. I mean, and the people love us. I've had people resell my houses. I've sold them and make 100 grand.
Wow.
So when people look at it from my side, they're like, oh, you're taking advantage of people. I said, tell that to the guy that just walked away with 100 grand from a house he bought with 3 grand down, through appreciation. I'm like, they love it.
It's kind of like an everybody wins situation for where
the lender
those
wins,
people are at.
we win, and our buyer wins.
That's
everybody
cool.
wins, right.
One thing that I think is really cool about it that can be really frustrating. I just finished a flip and got out of it, and it did not go as well as I had expected. But with the slow flip and what you guys do and what you teach, you're not making repairs, right? Like, so you're buying properties, not making repairs, and then having people move in, buying them from you, and they're making the repairs.
Some of them move in. We also sell to a lot of landlords.
Okay.
Ironically, and I refer to this guy as 2005 Scott, being me. Ironically, a lot of them do my old plan.
05 Scott would be buying your stuff.
Exactly. 05 Scott would be all over it because it was low money down and I can make a spread every month. So 05 Scott will see our ad, $3,000 down. You just got to fix this, this, and this and rent it. And 05 Scott's all over it. He's like, 3 grand down, I'll take it. I have guys that have 10 and 12 from me. And they buy them and then they rent them out. Some guys rent them per room. Some guys do Section 8 rentals. And they're getting $13.95 a month from Section 8. And they're paying us $8.75. So they're making money. They're happy with it. It's another house in their stable. We didn't do any repairs. We're just collecting our $8.75. We don't make any money for 5 years while we pay off our lender, but we get paid for 30 years. Everybody wins. I know everybody's like, there cannot be a situation where everybody wins. I'm like, well, tell me who's losing in the deal. Everybody wins.
Right. So finding these properties that are in these unique situations, that's the hard part, right? That's the real hunt.
So we have a system for it, but yeah, that's where the work comes in. So locally, the majority of my properties are here. I think I have maybe 38 that are in Illinois and St. Louis. The majority of my properties are here in Hampton Roads. And we do marketing. I do a lot of internet marketing. I do a lot of direct mail. So we do marketing. We get calls. We go on appointments. I have an appointment today at 2:00. We go on appointments. Now, I also wholesale. So if the deal fits as a wholesale deal, I will wholesale it. But sometimes I'll go on an appointment and I'm like, the only way this deal works is a slow flip. And if it's a slow flip deal, if I'm able to get it, then I keep it.
I think that's what I really shifted and learned this past year. Because to me, like I'm building a marketing company, so real estate isn't my full-time thing, but I haven't found anywhere that I like parking my money into besides real estate. But my mindset shift that I've had this past year was before I thought I had to have all the cash. I had to know every single thing. And then if I couldn't afford it myself or I couldn't get approved for it, then it wouldn't work. But now I'm starting to realize like it's more about finding the deal. And then there's all these avenues that you can deploy.
Almost, I don't want to say all of them, but almost everybody in my program started with no money. And my top guy right now has 75 or 76 love flips. And he started, it's not 5 years yet. In December, it'll be 5 years. And
he's gotten them within 5 years, within his first
within 5 years.
Wow.
And not only that, most of them within last year. I just saw a post on Facebook when I was scrolling through our private group from June of last year, June of 2022, where he had his closing packet and said, I just closed on my 35th one or whatever. And I'm like, you're at 75 now. And that was a year ago. I'm
crazy.
like, wow, because once you're rolling, it's just a process.
Yeah.
It's no longer, all of them that I have in St. Louis and Illinois, I've never seen any of them. Not one. I've never seen them. I've seen pictures, videos. I've sent guys by. We've got them filled. We got them producing, and I've never seen any of them. So people are like, oh, in my area, it doesn't work, or they're too expensive. I'm like, well, you don't have to buy in your area. They work anywhere. We operate like a bank. So you wouldn't say Bank of America has to go look at a house before they, you know what I mean? We have a process, and we just do the process.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people like that really understand the other options outside of just a traditional, like if you understand Burr, you're already ahead of like 99% of people in their understanding of real estate. But it's like even less understand these other options. Why do you feel like even real estate agents, like you go up to realtors and start talking about owner financing and wholesaling and, flips, and they're like, I don't do that. I don't know anything about that stuff. Like, doesn't it seem like there's like an educational, like huge gap between the traditional real estate stuff and these other opportunities?
There is,
like
but there's also, so one of the other things I'm always saying is there's a million ways to make $1 million, right? Choose one. And there's so many different avenues you can take in real estate, and use an agent as an example. Some agents crush it just being an agent. They don't have to learn any of that stuff, and they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. Some lawyers even will say, well, you can't do that. I'm like, you're a lawyer. Show me the law that says you can't. Okay, well, I guess I'm like, don't just say you can't do something because you don't understand it, right? And agents will do the same thing. People will be like, oh, no, you can't. I'm like, who says that you can't? Where are you getting this from? But it's their natural instinct. If it's not in their wheelhouse, they just say, nope, that can't be done.
Yeah.
People tell me that with wholesaling still. I did my biggest deal ever last week. Did you see the video I did on that? We did a wholesale deal for $250,000 assignment fee. I tell people and they're like, no, that you can't. I'm like, I did. I got the check. I already cashed it. What do you mean I can't?
What was the house like ARV? Like
it was about $1 million house. It was in
wow.
It was out of our area. It was by Petersburg, and it's not a deal. And I don't buy out of our area. I've done 2 deals out of an area in our life. One of them I made $200,000 on. This one was $250,000. I never buy out of the area. But my wife she's the one who answers our calls and sets appointments for me. And she's telling me, she's like, oh, I got this lead. And I said, just tell them we don't buy out there. That's how I am. I'm like, tell them we don't buy out there. We'll refer them to somebody. But then she goes through the conversation and she's like, oh, well, they inherited it. It's in bad condition. They own it free and clear. They're only going to be in town a day. They need to, they want to sell to us because they read all our reviews. And I was like, screw it. We'll go on. We'll go. It's a Saturday. We'll drive out there. And we did. And we got contracted it and crushed it. And my wife was always like, make sure everybody knows I'm the one who did, because she did everything. I'm like, okay, babe, you did everything. She did. Mind you, she did do everything.
That's cool.
But that was the best one in my life I've ever done. So where I was going with that is wholesaling. I love wholesaling. But I talk to people about wholesaling and they're like, well, you can't do that. And I'm like, yes, you can. I've been wholesaling since 2001. Yes, you can. And people have been doing it probably since the 50s, if not since the beginning of time. You can do it. It's legal, but people always want to say something they don't understand. Either can't be done or it's illegal or immoral, but it's not either of them. And
I don't know, if you think about do you think it's not really beneficial for the banks to do these type of things or for the mortgage companies compared to the traditional Burrs? To finance them, you mean? Yeah, because when I think about a Burr or even buying a house, the bank always seems like they get the house back. Eventually, they always get the house back. So let me tell you my opinion on that. Okay. I really believe that the regular rental, what we call traditional rental model, the Burr method and all of that, was invented by the banks.
I believe that they started the first real estate gurus going around telling people to buy and refi and take out mortgages for 30 years, then pull out the equity. Pull out the equity, yeah. Everybody's like, oh, it's the greatest thing in the world. Pull it out. So now you're in debt to me forever. And I have a vision that I share, and you might have seen it already, but I'm going to share it with you now. Is I always tell people, go to any city in the country and look at the tall buildings. They got bank logos on the side. And then I said, well, why is that? I said, think about your business model as a Burr guy or a conventional rental guy. Your business model is you have to run around, screen tenants, fill tenants, deal with the repairs, deal with the evictions, deal with a stolen air conditioning unit, repaint it for the next guy, change the carpet, do all this stuff. And every single month, fight to get your money. And once you get it, what do you do with it? Send it on up to the bank. And I have this vision that I would share of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons sitting at the top of the building like this. And he's just like, run along, guys. And he's talking to us, run along and collect all this money and send it to me. And that's what we do. That's what that whole refi-ing is. That's what all that pull out your equity is. You stay in debt and keep sending me the money. And so what we've done with the slow flip is basically turn that whole model on its head where we're Mr. Burns. We're the ones sitting now and everybody's running along. And on the first of the month, they're sending us the checks. And that's exactly how I feel. I'm like,
I think that might be why it's so unknown, is because unless it's individuals doing that, no big entity or no corporation or no market, no one's going to teach that stuff.
And I love when people tell me that it's unethical. I'm like, but it's okay when the banks do it, right? You don't mind them making interest, but if I make interest, there's something wrong with it. Right.
With Burrs,
I'm like, but if I make interest, it's unethical. But if the bank makes it, it's okay. Just checking, so we're on the same page. And they're like, well, I guess. I'm like,
yeah. It's like we're convinced by the banks that is the way it needs to be done. But we think we believe it. But it really, it could have been put in place by the banking system. And I always think like, wow, so you pay off your mortgage after 30 years, right? And then what happens? If you pass away, it gets sold. Who gets it back?
Right.
The banks get it back again. It's like, that to me is just crazy whenever I think of it. I'm like, eventually, no matter how much you pay off your houses, and I think people too get in a race like, I'm going to pay off my house. I'm going to pay it off quick. I'm going to, I want to own it. But it's like, the banks they eventually get it back. Like you can't take the house with you to the grave. Right. Do you think that there's value in having your personal house paid off?
100%. And this is very controversial. People would love to argue to the death with me about it. So I own my personal house free and clear. I own all my cars free and clear. I have no credit cards. I have credit cards, but we charge stuff, but it gets paid off instantly. I have no debt other than some slow flips that are still, in the 5-year term. I have a house I'm closing on in the Bahamas now, and it's a very expensive house, and we'll be owning that free and clear within a year because it's a process going through the process there. But I firmly believe in it, and I'm going to tell you the arguments and the counter arguments, although you might already be thinking them. People are like, well, you're going to lose your tax deduction. That's the biggest one. And I'm always like, think about your words. So you're saying I should pay $100 out in interest so that I can deduct $100 and save $30. Because that's what happened. That's the reality of it. But they don't talk about that. They just say you're going to lose your biggest deduction. You're right. But I get to keep the cash.
Right.
So you're right. I don't get to deduct interest, but I get to keep the cash I would have paid in the interest. And I'm like, how does that not compute with you? And but people love to be, in that mindset of, no, never pay off, never pay off, never pay off. I tell people two things. I say, one is, you've never met anybody who's free and clear that regrets it, period. The second thing is, I never realized how easy it is to build wealth until I was free and clear. Because we were always making a bunch of money, but what happens is you might bring in 10, 20, 30, 50 grand for the month, and it all goes out, and you're investing in stuff, and all that's great. But when you're making money and it doesn't go anywhere, it's like,
it just piles.
Oh, I guess I'll buy something else free and clear, or I'll invest. It just gets invested. And what does the investment do? It makes even more money. So now you had this money come in last month. Well, next month you have that much plus more because you didn't spend last month's, and it's almost unstoppable.
It's easy to just accidentally end up with assets that you need because you're like, where do I park this? Where do I put this money that's just getting stored
And I never
here?
planned on that or even realized as it was happening, because now I'm always like, I'm constantly investing in stuff. I'm like, and every month I have more than I had. I'm like, how do I have more? I keep buying more stuff.
Yeah.
But it's because the stuff I'm buying keeps making more, and it's just, I think we passed the snowball point.
You don't like storing money though. Like a lot of people are like, you're not a saver.
No.
Money.
Yeah.
You keep it moving.
Yeah.
You just like to be, you like to have cash in the assets that you have, and not necessarily
when
be
you
leveraged.
have money, doing deals is so much easier. Like, and I did this business for years with no money, and you can do the entire business: slow flips, rentals, rehabs, wholesale. You can do the whole business with $0. But since I've had money, I make so much more on deals because now I'll give you, for instance, and I can use the one that I just closed on, but I'll use a Virginia Beach one. It was marginal. And I know other investors who even went on the appointment and it was like, it was too tight. But I had the same appointment and I was like, I'll buy it because I paid with my own cash. And then all I did was put it on MLS.
You didn't have to pay the hard money guy.
Right. And then I put it on MLS and sold it for what the market will bear because it was in good shape. And we made like 35 grand on it. So it wasn't like it was a score.
Yeah.
But I tell my guys that I'm like, had you done that deal, you would have lost money. I want to make it clear. I'm like, I only made money because I used my money and put it on the market. It took me 6 weeks and then closed and sold. But if you did it without having your own money, it wasn't a deal. Right. So where I was going with that is having the money now opens up different opportunities that I would have said no to otherwise because there's just not enough money there. If you have to borrow, and there's too many variables, if you borrowed, that you'll be upside down.
Closing costs, all the fees, all the requirements to buy the property if it's a lender. And then if it's hard money, if you don't have a certain amount of deals and a good relationship, they're going to get you at 10%.
Right.
On a $100,000 house, that's 10 grand.
Right.
On 200,000, that's $20,000. So if you end up being close, that 20 could be make or break. What would you say for people who are trying to get their first deal out there? They're trying to go out and find their first property, whether it's to wholesale or to BRRRR. Like, how would you would you buy on market or would you look?
No, I never buy anything on market, period. So my opinion of that, so I call, and people laugh, especially if you're talking with agents, I call the MLS. The MLS is the multiple listing service. I call the MLS the misleading lead service. And the reason is because once it's on the market, it's fair market value. We're investors, we could never buy at fair market value. We have to buy below market. So as a rehabber using your own cash, you can sometimes find one on the MLS. But the easy way I tell people, and this cuts out the conversation completely. I know wholesalers who are trying to buy on the MLS. And I bought off the MLS, don't get me wrong. In certain market cycles, 10, 11, 12, I was crushing it off the MLS. The market cycle we're in now, everybody's on the MLS. So when somebody tells me they found a deal and they want to wholesale it on MLS, I say, well, just let's think about it this way. The house was listed to the world for $100,000. Now you want to contract it and sell it back to those same people who passed on it at 100 for 110. I said, if you think about it that way, it kind of sounds like common sense. You shouldn't buy it, right? And then the other way I try and explain to people who are rehabbers, they're like, well, no, I'm going to rehab it myself. I say, okay, but let's think about this. There is somebody out there who is using their own money. Well, he can pay 10% more than you. There's somebody out there who's their own agent. He can pay 3% more than you. There's somebody out there who's going to do the work themselves, right? And they're actually out there with a hammer. They can pay 10 grand more than you. So what you're saying is you're going to buy it, but you beat out all those people who have better odds. I said, so yes, you might win the deal, but you're going to lose money.
Yeah.
And it happens every time. They fight with me and they're like, no, I got the deal. I got the deal. I say, you got it. But
yeah. I think that's what I messed up with on this one that I just did. Because when my first deal that I did, I walked out with like $96,000 and I was like, whoa. Like I had been building a business. Awesome. Yeah, I'd been building a business and I was like, nothing's ever given me $96,000. Like no client is in 1 month give me $96,000 like right on the spot. So it was like really eye-opening. But I flipped it and I fixed it myself when I moved to it. And I house hacked. So like I rented the rooms out, did all that.
And what year was it? You also did it through a good
right
market.
Before COVID.
Yeah, then we had insane COVID market boom.
Yeah.
So everything worked in your favor.
Yeah, and then this one, I was like, it was on MLS, but it was in Newport News. So I was like, oh, it's a quieter market. And there was less competition on it. But we had to beat them out by like $2,000, I think, on the deal. But I had my girlfriend's an agent. So I was like, oh, well, the commission kind of comps it back. But yeah, I think that I just bought it. They always say you make your money on the buy, on the price.
You see it on the sell.
Now I'm like, never on market again. Like I'm never playing that, not even for my personal residence. Like I'm looking for a personal residence right now. I'm like, off market seems to be
because that's where the deals are. If it's on market by nature, it is what the market will bear. And I tell this when I go on appointments, I tell my sellers that. When I go on an appointment, everybody thinks like we're doing some magic trick to buy houses. I tell my seller, my offer is this. However, if you put it on the market, I'm sure you'll get a ton more. I tell them that on every appointment. The reason is they're selling to us for a reason. They have a pain or a problem and they want cash and quick. But I'm very transparent. I'm like, well, we're offering 90, but I bet you'll get 130 or 140 if you put it on the market. And they're no, I don't want anybody coming to my house. I don't want anybody here. I want this done quick. They have their reasons, but it's not a secret.
Yeah.
That's what market value means. The market has seen it, and this is what the market's willing to pay.
Yeah.
So I would never pay that. We're investors. We can't pay market value.
When you started hunting for off-market deals, I think some people it can be intimidating when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to reach out to this homeowner.
Right.
Did you ever experience that, or were you always just kind of like?
So I'm old. And so when we started, we didn't have the internet. And we started back then, all the deals were in Saturday paper. Saturday paper was the real estate section, and every house for sale is when you would call, and I would sit there with the paper and circle them and call and set appointments and go out and look at them. So they were advertising, so I wasn't finding them. They were putting them out there for us. So I didn't have the awkwardness at that time. Then I started running an ad in the Saturday paper myself, the We Buy House ad, and that was my first. They called me now to find out what I'd pay, not them listing with a price, right?
Yeah.
And so then I started going out, and it's really awkward. We have a whole system, and you didn't see that. That wasn't in that training that you saw, but we have a system we call them buy call appointments, where we go on the buy call, to meet with a seller, and we do a step-by-step system for obviously building rapport, for finding out their expectations, how much they want, for explaining to them we're not going to be near there. And then we have a system for when we go in and present the offer where it's not me against you, it's you and me against the world. And we're really good at it. And the way we teach works. I have a girl in our Freedom Accelerator program who's in Pennsylvania, and she had never seen this before. She was just doing wholesaling, and then we went through the whole training on how we buy houses, and she bought one now. She's going to make like 90 grand on it. And she's like, I never would have, because she came in with a mindset of I can pay this much, right? But then when we go through the exercise of, we call it managing expectations, getting the seller's expectations and then managing them down. And then she's like, well, I was going to offer 40 grand more, but that's what she wants. I mean, that's what I'm going to give her, right? And it's amazing how we get deals. We're not talking anybody into anything. It's their number.
Just saying the truth.
But it's their number. But we we have a process for getting the real number out of them, or what they need to solve their problem.
Yeah, and they probably feel like they're not getting sold or like pushed into something when you just
we're
tell
the opposite
them,
of pushing them into it.
Yeah, this is just where we're at. This is what we can do. You could deal with all that other stuff.
Yeah, we are low or no pressure, and not only that, we offer to help them if they don't go with us. Like I'll tell them, I say, if you decide you want to list it, give me a call. I have an agent I can refer you to. If you decide you want to rent it, I can help you to do the lease. And I do help them. I will help them with everything. I say, even if we're not involved in a transaction, I'm more than happy to help you with everything.
Yeah.
And the reason is, even if they end up going another route, people know people who are like themselves, right? So if they're a type of person with a distressed property, so are their friends. If they're a type of person with a house in foreclosure, so are their friends. And so the fact that we help them, even though we make nothing on it, when their friend is like, I came with my house in foreclosure, they're going to be like, listen, I know a guy who can help you. And they're not just giving a random card of somebody I met. This is the guy who helped me, even if we didn't buy a house from him. And so it works really, really well.
You just have multiple avenues depending on where they're at, almost trying to you're really almost servicing them.
We are. We give them all of their paths of what they can do. It doesn't mean that's what they want to do.
And that, in a sense, puts you on the table as an option.
Right.
It's just about being on the table as the option.
And I'll tell them straight out every time, you will make more money listing your house. It's not a secret. People always want to hide that. And I'm like...
Yeah, they're not stupid.
Like we ask them, have you talked with an agent? And people are like, I don't want to say that because they might not have thought of talking with an agent. I'm like, listen, everybody knows if you want to sell your house, you call an agent. It's not a secret.
Yeah.
And so I put it out there. I said, have you spoke with an agent? What did they say? Or you didn't talk with them, why not?
Yeah.
And so we want to know.
But when the roof's collapsing, good luck getting an agent to get that.
Or they got 87 dogs and there's piles everywhere. And there's all kinds of scenarios.
You gonna show the house like that?
Yeah, there's all kinds of scenarios.
Yeah. So the Freedom Accelerator, it's a really cool name. And to me, my understanding of what you're doing is it's like you're taking the power from the banks and the big organizations. And now we've got like these powerhouses buying all these houses. You're taking all that big dominant control that, we're kind of under, that makes it hard to buy houses. And you've created an avenue for people to be able to be like the banks, right?
Exactly.
To be able to get in and get at a position like the banks are, where they're geting the check for 30 years.
And we make our money on interest, just like banks do. Only interest on equity that we created. Yeah. So people are like, oh, it's phantom equity. That's not real. I'm like, but the check we get every month for the interest on it is real.
And that's where the freedom comes in.
That's where the freedom comes in.
That check every year. And then just like the banks, if they stop paying, let's say 7 years in,
we start over again.
Be able to assume the property back. That's awesome. Yeah. What about taking over mortgages? Have you ever done that type of?
I've done hundreds of them. Yeah, they call it subject to, which basically just means buying the house subject to the existing financing.
Okay.
So yes, I've done hundreds of them. I still do occasionally. I just did one big one right here in Virginia Beach, which is interesting because it's a slow flip, but it's $875,000 house. But I bought it subject to. I got
Is that one where the floors are all messed up and like it was a nice house, but they just...
The floors weren't messed up. They had plywood laid out on the floor because he did a bunch of work.
But the kitchen was demoed.
The kitchen was gone. Yeah, the kitchen was gone. The master bath was gone. It's a long story with it, which I won't get into for his privacy reasons. But I bought that house sub 2, and now I've resold it with the slow flip method. So
you can get it sub 2 and then use slow flip.
Correct. We got $65,000 down on it. And I paid $52,000 down when I bought it. So I have no money invested in the house now, and I have a multiple $100,000 spread on it and $3,000 a month positive cash flow.
Wow. What about the option of buying a property owner financed? Like, say you have someone who, they're wanting to get rid of it. Do you ever work out where you're buying owner finance from them?
100%. We buy a lot with owner financing, but I don't buy. We sell on what we call kind financing. We have a program called kind financing, which is a combination of an agreement for deed, land contract, right? We won't buy through a program like that. We only sell through it. And the reason is because we know what we're doing and stable with it. If you buy through a program like that, and the person you're buying from, for instance, got in a car accident and got sued and a judgment went against them, it would attach to the house.
Wow.
So we won't buy that way, but we'll buy with traditional owner financing where the deed transfers and now we own it and we make a payment to the seller every month.
Okay.
We get a lot of deals at 0% interest by doing that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I have a
But your first point where like the owner gets in a car accident, I had a deal recently where I was thinking about presenting him owner financing. And I was just kind of nervous about it because I'm like, I don't know, like that side of it. So how do you know when the owner financing is like safe and secure as a buyer? I'm
going to give you $1 million worth of information right here. All right. So first off, we make our offer. One of the things I always say, the offer is what the offer is, right? And I'm going to give you, for instance, the house is worth 120, the guy wants 100, but our offer is 75. So in order for me to pay cash, 75 is my offer. But he's adamant, I won't sell it for less than 100, right? That's it. I won't sell it for less than 100. So rather than just saying, okay, well, have a nice life, we'll say, well, the only way I can do 100 is if you were interested, I can do $1,000 a month for 100 months, right? And so we're presenting him with the number he wanted to hear, which is the 100 grand.
Just in a different way.
Because sometimes that's all they want. They want the 100 grand. They're adamant about that, even though financially it doesn't make sense. You'd have been better off with the 75 grand invested over those 10 years and you would have had more than the 100 grand. But people are funny.
But without the mortgage and the interest and all that, you're basically getting it at 350 when it is 500.
Exactly. But the other thing is this, interest. And this is the $1 million answer I'm going to give you right here. So sometimes they will say, well, that sounds good, but what about interest? I got to get interest, right? And you would just think, well, damn, $1,000 a month, 100 months, that sounds like a good deal. Paying interest on that's going to take that same thing and push it out to 30 years. I don't want to do 30 years. That's not our business. We want stuff paid off. So the way we word it, and this is really the critical part here, is we always offer interest when they ask on the payment. So I will say something along the lines of, oh yeah, I forgot about the interest. Okay, so what if I give you 10% of the payment every month will be interest? So instead of $1,000, I'll give you $1,100. So every month, 10% of the payment will be interest, and we'll do that for the 10 years. Almost 100% of the time, you'll get a yes right away. Because now in their head, they're hearing 10% interest.
Yeah.
It's not. It's 1.2% interest. Because now you're making, the interest is on the payment, not on the balance. On a mortgage, the interest is on the balance, the $100,000.
It's not like a compounding effect.
No. So on a mortgage, you'd be paying 10% on the $100,000.
Right.
The way we do it, we're paying 10% on the $1,000.
Oh.
So we end up paying.
And that ends up being way less over time.
It's nothing, because if you were to amortize it, if you've seen an amortization schedule, no doubt, $1,000 payment might be $850 in interest and $150 in principal. This is the opposite. We're getting $1,000 in principal and $100 in interest.
You're basically just offering them 10% more in cash in a way. Like if it's $100,000, you're really saying I'll give you 110.
Yeah.
You're giving them 10 grand. Whereas if that 100 were to
10
amortize
grand over 10 years. Yeah.
If that 100 were to amortize over 30 years, it'd be 190 or something.
Yeah.
At 10%, it'd be like 250.
An $89,000 house at $875 a month comes out to $315,000 over 30 years. You know, I mean, it's drastic how much interest adds up when you do an amortization schedule.
So you've got all these different tools in your tool belt that you're using to acquire slow flips too. It's not just like the same.
Just one plan, correct.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's what's really cool. So do you teach all of those different avenues in the Freedom Accelerator?
You almost have to, because otherwise you're going to go on appointments and they're going to be wasted. Because you're going to have a good lead, a motivated seller, everything about it's good, but you only know that you can only pay 30 when there are 5 other things you can do. And so yeah, you have to do all of them.
that seems like the main way people really end up being successful in real estate. It's like they don't just have the one avenue. Like I think you can be a great performer with one avenue, but it seems like people who really crush it, they have like all these different avenues.
And just being open-minded and creative, yeah.
What about apartments and commercial? I know that you had said some stuff about that, but you've stayed out of that, right?
So I believe that apartments and commercial are going to be a fantastic investment in about 5 years, maybe less, maybe more, but I don't have a crystal ball. But right now I'm not at all interested in it because of the fact that it's so overinflated. But rents keep going up and they keep staying good deals. So, all I know is I know what I'm doing and what I'm doing is working well. And again, it goes back to there's a million ways to make $1 million. I have friends who kill it in apartments and they kill it. And I'm like, oh God, I should have been doing that. But then I'm like, you know what? Just stay in your lane and do what you do.
Yeah.
And you can't do everything.
Right. So this like whole plan that you have that you've learned through slow flips, you give this away in your program, right? Like when people sign up and pay for the program, you break down how all of this works. What do they get inside of that whole entire engagement? So
my program is different than pretty much anything out there. And the reason I did it this way is because I've been in a lot of programs. And so there's a lot of stuff I don't like about them. So one of the things we do is it's not just a course, because I hate courses. Sometimes you get them, you watch them, and then you're like, oh, I have 47 questions, but I'm stuck now. And so what we did is I call it the 3 C's. So my program has its course. So it has all the courses, which is ever evolving. I'm constantly adding new stuff as new questions and challenges come up. But it also has community. So it's almost like Facebook, but it's not on Facebook, where you can make posts and comments and they talk to each other on their deals. They post their deals. Almost. Yep. And then the last C is coaching. Once a week, which is Wednesdays, we do an online meeting with everybody from around the country. And I generally go through whatever I'm working on at the moment. And then I go through everybody in there, what projects they're working on, what challenges they have and what questions they have. And we go through everybody in there. And so it's a lot more than if you were to just buy a course, because I bought my share of courses, and at the end I'm like, oh, this is great, but they didn't explain this, and who do I ask? And they're like, oh, yeah, send it to my support team. I'm like, okay, thanks, that was great. So do you have people in your program too, like it's like sharing deals in a way too? Oh, yeah. You have a lot of So there's 2 kinds of people that share deals. So there's some people that are just locating deals and they wholesale them to people in the group. There's other people who buy their marketing, so they're getting as much as they can, but if they only have funding for 3 deals and they get 6, they put the other 3 in the group to get them, put out there to see who wants to buy them. Do you feel like the real estate market, that's getting harder to get into and getting more saturated? There's a little bit of me that feels like it's gotten really competitive with YouTube and with all the education out there, that like it's getting harder. Do you feel? So when I started, everybody told me, don't get into real estate. It's oversaturated. There's too many people doing it. And these seminars were coming in town every week. And this is talking in the 90s. And I always repeat that because so many times people would tell me, oh, I wish I did it years ago, but now it's too saturated. And the thing you have to remember is, as an investor, you don't need thousands of deals. Yeah. You need one. You did 1 deal and made 90 grand. How many deals do you need to do in a year? 3 like that to be freaking killing it, right? So people think, oh, it's saturated, as if you're Coke and Pepsi. I'm like, no, there's houses everywhere. One square mile of houses is enough for you to do the rest of your career. 1 square mile. I mean, you don't have to have 1,000 deals. Yeah. And so, no, I don't believe you'll ever be saturated. Plus, it's all coming through relationships. As you grow, it's all through relationships. And the other cool thing is, it's like anybody can do it almost in any financial situation. Right. It's like one of the few avenues where you could be working at McDonald's making $12 an hour and go wholesale something and make 50 grand that month, or go get into a slow flip deal and 5 years later have someone paying you $700. Now, you say there's a sweet spot for slow flips in price. I remember in your seminar that like sometimes too expensive or too cheap. What's that sweet spot? So what we try and do is to create there's no actual number. And the reason is it all depends on what it'll bring in monthly. So we try and create a price point based on what it'll bring in monthly, where it can be paid off in 5 years. So like even out here in Hampton Roads now, we're paying a lot of them, we're paying 50 grand for, which people are like, you can't buy houses in Hampton Roads for 50 grand. I'm like, don't tell it to my guys, because we're buying probably a minimum of 10 a month, if not more. Not me personally, but within my group. And so they're out there, right? Well, at 50 grand on 5-year money at 12%, it comes out to $1,112.22 a month. But they get on the low end $1,175. Most of them now are getting about $1,350. So they're still paying themselves off in 5 years. So it's a non-issue. And that's where I tell it, no matter what market you're in, is to look at what are the comparable rents and how much can it afford to pay off in 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think finding the deal is just where it starts, it seems like, regardless of where you're at, whether you're doing burrs or like finding the deals. And I think if it gets more saturated, I think the off market becomes more important.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, more people getting into it makes real estate more valuable because more people are interested in it as a whole. And I think it just comes down to finding them off market. That's what I'm like learning right now. It's like, okay, you can't go on the MLS.
Yeah, and you don't need 100 deals. You get one. Get one.
Just one. So for people who want to get started, like in the Freedom Accelerator program, do you recommend they go through your webinar first and then?
No, I'm going to tell you, and I brought this for you as well. So the first thing I think anybody should do, I've made this is my new book. Did you see it already?
I saw you post it, yeah.
So we made a page actually right now where we're giving it to all you people for free, just pay shipping and handling. So you can go to slowflip, slowflip.com. slowflip.com, and you can get a free copy of the book. And that's a great place to start. And then you'll see the training from there if they were interested in going further with it. But the book,
So you think the book is a good place to start?
The book is the best place to start,
Okay.
yeah.
It's going to give you just a foundational understanding of a lot of stuff.
As you know, and you've watched my training, I don't hold anything back. And so literally, if you have questions, they're in there.
Wow.
And I think that's the easiest way to get started. And the other thing I'll tell somebody, whether you did my program or anybody's program, it doesn't matter, or did it all on your own, is everybody always asks, what's the one piece of advice you'd give, right, to somebody? And this is my biggest advice I give people. I said, just do something every day. It doesn't have to be where you spend 8 hours. It's just something. Do something every day towards your business. And before you know it, you're going to look back a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're going to have a full flourishing business and be like, I never worked that hard. How did this happen?
Yeah.
Well, it's because you do one little thing every single day and it compounds.
Right. So you said that in the beginning of this that you accidentally got into real estate.
Yeah.
Now, being this far in and seeing different avenues, do you feel like real estate is the best avenue to achieve?
1,000%.
Yeah.
There's nothing else like it where, and we didn't get into my whole background, but I dropped out of school in 11th grade. And there is nothing else like it where a guy with no special training, special skills, education, credit, money, anything could pull off the life I've pulled off in another avenue. Not to say I couldn't have created Amazon or something that's a one-off, right?
Right.
But the reality is this is something that anybody can do. There are things where some unique person, Zuckerberg created Facebook or whatever, there are unique things, but this is something that, and I tell people all the time, I said, anybody can do this if you're just willing to actually do it.
Like there can only be one Facebook really.
Right, exactly.
But you can be 1,000
There's 1,000 of us
people
doing this, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. Well, cool, man. I appreciate you coming on and sharing the information with me and with everybody watching this podcast. So hopefully people will go out and get the book and then also start getting into slow flips and realizing those other options they have besides just the burr and just buying a house and paying it off.
Yeah,
so.
not a fan of the burr.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I had a good
thank you
time.
very
It was
much,
good.
man.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Appreciate it.